This is KM Weiland, and you are listening to the 229th episode of the Helping Writers Become Authors podcast. I'm off and running with my new work in progress. For those of you who remembered that I was wavering between two possible story ideas, I can end the agony of your curiosity. I've committed to my historical superhero story, what I'm calling Spider-Man meets Jane Austen. The working title is Wayfarer. It's set in Regency, England, and is proving to be a ton of fun to work on. I'm up to my elbows in the general sketches of my outlining, which means I'm lining up my cast of characters, figuring out my protagonist's arc, and hunting for plot points. More updates on that soon. Are you creating your own cliches? The latest post in the video series on my blog discusses how authors sometimes create and perpetuate their own cliches from book to book, and how to conquer that tendency. To watch it, visit my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. New videos are posted every Wednesday. And now, I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast entitled Warning Signs. Your character is acting out of character. One of the worst criticisms any writer can hear is that his character is acting out of character. This indicates that the writer has failed in one of his most important jobs, creating and maintaining realism in his story world. When a character acts out of character, what this really means is that the writer has failed to sustain the causal believability of his character's actions. And the result, readers become distanced from the character, and their suspension of disbelief is at best endangered. But the most frustrating thing about this accusation is that however easy it may be for readers to sling it, it's ridiculously difficult for writers to identify it. After all, who knows their characters better than we do? If a character is acting out of character, certainly we'd be the first to spot it. So our first inclination can be to snort and think our readers are crazy. Obviously, they just don't get this character. But when readers then supply specific examples, we're often still at a loss. We're likely to throw up our hands, stomp our feet, and howl, "He's totally in character. I know my character. I know what he would do, and this is what he would do." Sadly, all this throwing, stomping, and howling doesn't go far in convincing readers that we're right and they're wrong. The proof, after all, is in the pudding. The reason out-of-character characters can be so difficult for writers to see or accept is that they're usually the result of our own blind spots. Let's consider a handful of the warning signs. 1. Your character suddenly changes personality. 2. Your character suddenly changes goals. 3. Your character suddenly changes his behavior toward another important character. 4. Your character experiences significant emotional swings. 5. Your character does something unexpected. Now, if you're like me, you're probably able to look at that list and identify several instances in your own stories in which characters have done just that. So, what in tarnation am I trying to tell you? That your characters in your perfectly good story are acting out of character. The nerve. Well, maybe that's what I'm telling you, but more than likely your characters are just fine the way they are, even with all those sudden changes. The root of the out-of-character problem is a little more complicated than the bare warning signs all by themselves. Here's the simple truth about characters acting out of character. The idea that certain people will never behave certain ways is just flat out untrue. Put any person in the right situation and he will act in ways that even he could never have predicted. The entire story of Jim Sheridan's Brothers hinges on this idea. The good brother goes to war, is captured, and in his desperation to get back to his wife and daughters, he murders one of his own soldiers. Did he act out of his character, as it was established in the beginning of the story? Sure. Did it work in the story anyway? Absolutely. So this leads us to the premise that the real problem we're addressing isn't the actual act of the characters acting out of character. So what is it? The real problem is lack of causal realism, or in other words, lack of believably constructed character motive. Consider our previous list of warning signs. If you can identify any moment in your story that qualifies, look deeper. Ask yourself if any of the following also ring true. 1. The character lacks any obvious or sensible reason for his unusual actions. 2. The character's reason for his new motive isn't strong enough. 3. The story fails to explain the character's motivation. 4. The narrative fails to offer proof the character is evolving into someone who would feasibly perform this new action. 5. The narrative fails to present enough time for the character's evolution to make sense. And 6. The narrative doesn't share the character's inner reactions, especially in sequel scenes. If you're getting reports that your characters are acting out of character, it may be a sign of a deeper problem in your plot, your character building, or your narrative flow. Identifying which, or all three, are at fault will help you figure out how to create stories and characters that resonate with readers, no matter how many unexpected turns they may take. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, you can visit my website at helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And be sure to check back again next week.